I call the member for Melbourne Ports.
Thank you, Acting Speaker. On behalf of the Joint Standing Committee on Migration, I present the committee's report, incorporating a dissenting report, additional comments and a minority report entitled Immigration Detention in Australia, Community-Based Alternatives to Detention, together with the minutes of the proceedings and evidence received by the committee, and I move that the report be made a parliamentary paper.
The question is that the report be made a parliamentary paper. All those of that opinion say aye. The contrary, no. I declare the ayes have it. The member for Melbourne Ports.
Thank you, Speaker. On behalf of the Joint Standing Committee on Migration, I present this report, Immigration Detention in Australia, Community-Based Alternatives to Detention. In presenting the second report of the committee, I note that a majority of the committee is extremely pleased that the government's already taken steps to respond to the committee's recommendations in our first report, tabled in December. In particular, recommendation 18 of that report recommended the government introduce legislation to waive all detention charges and debt. The government responded swiftly to this recommendation by introducing the Migration Amendment Abolishing Detention Debt Bill 2009 and into the Senate on 18 March. This report was concluded that we're considering now by the Treasurer, was considered before the Treasurer delivered the budget speech on 12 May, which decided to vote in favour of $14 million for assisted voluntary return program, which encourages and facilitates those found not to meet the criteria for entry to Australia to return home. There's also more money for programs to assist those granted asylum to adjust. The committee acknowledges that this is one of the many welcome changes to government policy in immigration detention. However, despite changes to both policy and administrative culture in recent times, we must do better. The committee has therefore chosen to focus this report on the conditions and material support for release into the community, including appropriate options for community-based alternatives to secure detention. The report recognises that secure detention will continue to play a role in our immigration system. It forms an integral part of our robust immigration system. However, co-located open residential accommodation in the community can provide people with safe environments while still being accessible to the Department of Immigration and Citizenship and other service providers. Community-based alternatives can also be more cost-effective than the current high levels of physical security or on-site staffing requirements in immigration detention centres. The committee's first report explored the potential damage of long-term detention on people, the harsh psychological burdens inflicted by long and indefinite periods of detention, as well as restrictions on income, work and health care for community-based bridging visa holders is known to have had harmful effects on those involved. The report supports people who lawfully come to Australia as well as those who fled their native land seeking asylum, invests in case management and actively seeks an expected who actively seek an expected immigration outcome. That is why the committee has recommended that the Australian government reform the bridging visa framework to comprehensively support those released into the community with appropriate reporting or surety requirements. The committee recommends that the government utilise the reformed bridging visa formula in lieu of community detention until a person's immigration status is resolved, and review the cases of those currently on residence determinations. The committee has also recommended that there should be an improved transparency in immigration decision-making, improved access to legal advice, improved access to voluntary return counselling to help individuals decide what is going to be best and most realistic outcome for themselves and their families. The committee recognises that there are basic rights such as access to appropriate health care, housing, that should be afforded to all people regardless of their immigration status. The committee recommends the Australian government should, where needed, provide basic income assistance that is means-tested, access to necessary health care, assistance in sourcing appropriate temporary accommodation and community orientation information that and in addition that children in particular are provided with safe, appropriate accommodation with their parents and guardians, provision of basic necessities such as adequate food, primary and secondary schooling. Lastly, the committee is concerned that reliance on the private rental market as an alternative to immigration detention is inadequate and inefficient, and in recommending that the Australian government have access to a stock of community-based immigration housing. I would like to express my appreciation to hard-working members of the committee. I also note that despite a considerable effort to achieve consensus, the number of minority reports have been generated. Of particular note is the extraordinary diversity of opinion displayed by members of the opposition. The member for Murray, for instance, having supported the committee's endorsement of Labor's detention policy in December 2008, has now, for reasons of political expediency, I would judge, refused to endorse this new report and has written her own report. The other members of the opposition have, however, failed to follow the opposition spokesperson on immigration. Both the the Deputy Chair of the member for Hughes has endorsed the report, for which I thank her. The member for Kooyong has gone in another direction, tabling his own dissenting report, which I'm sure he'll speak about. Polls apart from the Shadow Minister. Senator for Vanty Wells joined the committee late and failed to endorse the committee's report, or 4 dissenting reports. 4 opposition members, 4 positions. This report, Speaker, provides recommendations forming part of a framework which will maintain Australia's border security while ensuring unauthorised arrivals and other immigrants are treated humanely.